Wife!
Do you know what we're doing today and how the hell we got here on a Monday?
Well, on Friday, we read Daniel chapter 10.
We sure as fuck did.
And in that chapter, we had Daniel with a vision. Not a dream this time, it's a vision. Mm-hmm. And he saw a man that was topaz, but gold topaz, sort of bronze topaz maybe? I don't know.
It might have been blue topaz.
Who knows? But he had a lightning face and torches for eyes.
And linen...
Gold belt. He had a gold belt.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so that was, he was by the Tigris, and the guy touched him a couple of times to give him strength and to give him a message or something. I don't really know.
He's like, you're going to want to sit down for this. I'm about to tell you some shit.
Right.
And then Daniel was like, I can't. And then the dude was like, here, eat this mushroom. It's a power up. And so then Daniel ate it, and he was like, do, 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 or however the Mario music goes.
And then we found out the guy was detained for like 3 weeks by the Persian king.
Yeah.
So,
evil forces.
And evil forces. So this guy with the lightning face, he was detained by them, by Persia, apparently.
The Prince of Persia.
Yeah, sure.
Like the game.
That's a thing that happens. And celestial beings imprisoned by Persia, sure. And then the angel Michael maybe came in and got him out of Persia.
Sure, as he does.
And then they went and chatted with Daniel by the Tigris, I guess.
Yeah, and it took him a few weeks to bust out of there.
So it was really, but this was the precursor to the vision that we're going to be hearing about the rest of the book of Daniel, apparently.
Which is today and tomorrow.
So maybe we'll learn more about what the fuck happened and what's going on.
Who could know?
I sure as fuck don't know.
Who could know?
Yeah. So anyway, that was Daniel chapter 10.
Sure as fuck was.
Which means that today we're getting into
some bullshit. I mean, Daniel chapter 11.
All right, let's do this.
Okie dokie. All right, we are hopping into Daniel chapter 11. But before we do that...
Daniel. Chapter 11.
Whatever.
You were just trying to power through that.
I really was.
Yeah, no,
before we do that, though, I need to say that these last three chapters, 10, 11, and 12, are one vision, and they're continuous. They were arbitrarily cut in various places that make no fucking sense.
So these are all going to end on a cliffhanger.
Well,
what you're saying.
Like, chapter 10... ended in the middle of a parentheses.
Right, yeah.
Like, literally, in the middle of a parentheses.
Right.
And, I mean, I'm guessing that they probably just cut these into chapters, like, at the end of a scroll or something.
Sure.
Like, that makes sense. Otherwise, why wouldn't they keep shit together that was supposed to be together?
Right.
Because that's just dumb.
Yeah, I guess.
But
I don't know.
Given that this is supposed to be one continuous thing... and that we ended in the middle of a parentheses, I'm going to go back to the end of chapter 10.
Okay.
And not just pick up where we left off. I'm going to pick up a few sentences back.
Sure. Okay? Sounds good.
So, when the dude, spoke to me, Daniel, I was strengthened and said, "Speak, my lord, since you've given me strength." Okay?
Yeah.
So the shiny dude, said... "Do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the Prince of Persia. And when I go, the Prince of Greece will come. But first, I will tell you what is written in the Book of Truth."
Yeah.
"No one supports me against them except Michael, your prince. And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect them."
Right. Okay? Yeah, this was really weird. This whole thing is really weird.
Well... my parentheses voice, the first sentence was the end of chapter 10.
We're continuing in parentheses
the second sentence, I just read the second sentence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. I just pretended like it was one thing.
Oh.
And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect him.
Okay.
Was the second part of that.
Got it.
Okay,
yeah.
So now that's the end, of that bit.
Sure.
Okay, so now we're starting chapter 11.
Got it.
And... what's really funny is that it does have that one sentence, the end of the parentheses, by itself. And then like chapter 11 has its own like, and now we're starting chapter 11. And I'm like,
really weird break. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So weird. So we're going to learn about some North and South kings
Okay.
And that's what we're getting into today.
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
We're also going to learn about Antiochus.
Oh, okay.
Epiphanies.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
And that's going to be interesting.
Right. So it's interesting. We were just talking about Darius, but like we're going to jump ahead by hundreds of years, apparently, to learn about Antiochus.
I don't know. We're going to do a thing because this is a long chapter. I'm not sure what all is covered.
Okay.
I did take some notes, but I didn't pay attention a lot to like years and things.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, I get that they cover a lot of ground in the visions and dreams of Daniel, but you know, it's just weird that in the same chapter we'd be talking about Darius and Antiochus.
Well, like I said, this is a super long chapter, so maybe it won't be as weird once we get into it.
Yeah, maybe not, but I doubt it.
All right, so yeah, you're right. So now we're gonna hop into it, and the dude is talking. Okay.
Yeah, the dude.
The shiny dude.
The shiny dude.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Now then, I tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia. Like, remember, I, the shiny dude, have been telling you about all these kings and whatever, and Daniel's been dreaming about horns and different kingdoms with they come and go through history.
And I would assume that we're not just talking about 3 new kings, we're talking about 3 new kingdoms, like the people that are going to rule Babylon or whatever.
No, he says 3 more kings will arise in Persia.
Oh.
And then a 4th who will be far richer than all the others.
Okay.
When he has gained power by his wealth, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king will arise who will rule with great power and do as he pleases. After he has arisen, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 winds of heaven.
And that was Alexander the Great.
I think so, yeah.
If I go by what we learned in our Q&A and various other places. So,
yeah.
Okay.
It will not go to his descendants, nor will it have the power he exercised, because his empire will be uprooted and given to others.
Okay.
The king of the south will become strong, but one of his commanders will become even stronger than he, and will rule his own kingdom with great power.
Okay.
After some years, they will become allies. The daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to make an alliance, but she will not retain her power, and he and his power will not last.
Okay.
So these 2 kingdoms are at war. Syria and I forget what the other one is. Oh, shoot. What is the other kingdom?
I don't know.
I know. Give me a second. Let me see if I can scroll up. I mean, this chapter is so fucking long that my notes are like 10 years.
Well, I find it interesting that we're talking about this, and like these things they're writing about this and knowing that these things happened, and they're writing it as though it is a prophecy from Daniel in this time of, you know, Babylon and Persia, but the way they write it gives away the fact that they already know about it. They're writing about it with too much detail, and they know way too much about what's happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you found where you're trying to figure this out at?
I'm trying, and I just really don't. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
The king of the south likely refers to the dominion of the Saracens or Arabs.
Okay.
And the king of the north likely refers to the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
So I was wrong, but
got it.
At some point they talk about Syria and maybe Macedonia, Greece. I don't know.
Got it.
Look, there are so many fucking kingdoms and time periods that like I'm losing all sense because they just threw them all at us all of a sudden.
Right.
So I'm losing all sense of what happened.
Well, we're catching up on like 400 years of history is what we're doing with the book of Daniel.
Right.
Right. We're covering a large swath of time. And so we're having them, they're trying to push all of this into a few visions and a few chapters, but we're covering a large bit
swath
of time.
Of history. Yeah. And that's what a lot of my notes were. And also, in 2 different sets of notes that I was reading, like summary wise, the sources that I utilize, they both said that their summaries were more going through history and telling what happened in history.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this stuff actually happened.
Sure. We're recounting this after the fact.
Right.
And we're putting it in the words of a vision or a dream.
Right.
But it is just basically going through what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So in those days, she will be betrayed. So, this girl's going to go from one kingdom to the other to try to ally the kingdoms by marrying in.
Right.
But in those days, she will be betrayed together with her royal escort and her father and the one who supported her.
Okay. All right.
One from her family line will arise to take her place. He will attack the forces of the kingdom of the north and enter his fortress. He will fight against them and be victorious.
Great. That's awesome.
He will also seize their gods, their metal images, and their valuable articles of silver and gold and carry them off to Egypt.
I like how they say seize their god.
Right.
It goes to that whole idea. We've been talking about this, through some of the latter prophets, right? Mm-hmm. And how these people talk about gods in a way that they are talking, like when they conquer an area, they are conquering a god because that god represents these localities, right? Mm-hmm. They're not just they're not universal gods; they are local gods. Mm-hmm. So it's funny that they actually kind of admit that by saying that they conquered, beat a god type thing.
Also, I think it's really funny. Like, clearly, what you mean is you're going to pick up some idols. Right. Like, I'm going to pick up a pair of shoes and, I need to pick up the cat barfed. I need to pick that up. And also, I'm going to pick up a god. Like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's all these things that I need to pick up, and God is on the grocery list.
Right.
So fucking weird.
Yep.
Yeah, so he picked up the gold and the gods, and he carried them off to Egypt.
Okay.
For some years, whoever this guy is, he will leave the king of the north alone. Then the king of the north will invade the realm of the king of the south, but will retreat to his own country.
Okay.
His sons will prepare for war and assemble a great army which will sweep on like an irresistible flood and carry the battle as far as his fortress.
This is a lot of vagary, right?
Yeah,
like it's so hard to fall. Like, yes, we can dig into this and assume that they mean this thing or that thing and whatever. Mm-hmm. But listening to this,
I can't follow it.
Yeah, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I might have to this might be a long episode because I have summary of what actually happened during this time period that will help clear this up.
Got it.
Then the king of the south will march out in a rage and fight against the king of the north, who will raise a large army, but it will be defeated. When the army is carried off, the king of the south will be filled with pride and will slaughter many thousands. Yet he will not remain triumphant.
Okay.
For the king of the north will muster another army larger than the first, and after several years, he will advance with a huge army fully equipped.
Holy shit, this is so
back
dumb.
And forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Like this king and that king and north and south and whatever.
And I'm not going to name a single one or tell you a year. Yeah. In those times, many will rise against the king of the south.
Okay.
Those who are violent among your own people will rebel in fulfillment of the vision, but without success.
Can you imagine reading this in a vacuum, right? Like not knowing what the fuck they're talking about.
And not having Google.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, what?
This is supposed to be the word of God, right?
Yeah.
So you would assume that you could just skip 1,000 years of history without any humans in it. And then someone should be able to pick this up later and say, that makes sense because it's the word of God, right?
Yeah.
But no, you have to know detailed history about the time frame when this happened in order to understand what the fuck they're talking about.
Right.
It doesn't just automatically make sense.
Well, here, I do know what he's talking about when he says those who are violent among your own people will rebel. He's talking about the Jews are going to get involved in one of these wars between the North and the South.
Sure.
And so they're going to rebel.
Well, okay, yeah, but that's still...
No, I know. I'm just saying I know that bit.
Okay, yeah.
Then the king of the north will come and build up siege ramps and will capture a fortified city. Some fortified city.
Uh-huh.
The forces of the south will be powerless to resist. Even their best troops will not have the strength to stand. The invader will do as he pleases. No, I forgot if we're talking about north or south here.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Who cares?
I have no idea.
No one will be able to stand against him. He will establish himself in the capital B, beautiful, capital L, land. Beautiful land.
I'm assuming that's got to be Israel, right? Because we're capitalizing it, maybe?
Sure. He's going to establish himself in the beautiful capital land.
Right.
And will have the power to destroy it. He will determine to come with the might of his entire kingdom and will make an alliance with the king of the south. And he will give him a daughter in marriage in order to overthrow the kingdom, but his plans will not succeed or help him.
This is like written by a child.
Everybody fails.
What the fuck? This is so bad.
Yeah, and that was the first 17 verses.
Wow.
Right?
Man.
So we're only on verse 18 here.
This is just
it's really painful.
This is really painful.
Right?
Yeah.
Then he will turn his attention to the coastlands and will take many of them. But a commander will put an end to his insolence.
A commander. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And will turn his insolence back on him, as you do.
Yeah.
After this, he will turn back toward the fortresses of his own country, but guess what? He'll stumble and fall to be seen no more.
Okay. All right, yeah.
His successor will send out a tax collector to maintain the royal splendor. In a few years, however, he will be destroyed, yet not in anger or in battle. He will be succeeded by a contemptible person, I know who this is, who has not been given the honor of royalty. The contemptible person is the vile person, and that is Antiochus.
Okay. All right.
I know that from my
notes. I'm trying to imagine what this vision looks like to Daniel, right?
Yeah, he's just like
we are all over the fucking place. Ping
pong ball going north, south, north, south, north, south, north, south. All right, so this dude is contemptible, and he has not been given the honor of royalty. He will invade the kingdom when its people feel secure, and he will seize it through intrigue.
Intrigue, huh?
What he does is he befriends himself to everybody, and he bribes, and he just walks in with dollar, dollar, dollar. He throws money at everybody and everything.
Okay.
And no, I'm not describing Trump, but I could be. And he's like, I'm your friend. And then he goes to the enemy and says, just kidding, I'm your friend.
Right.
And so he just like walks right in. He strolls right in and then turns around and stabs them.
Got it.
So that's what they mean intrigue.
Got it.
Then an overwhelming army will be swept away before him.
Okay.
Both it and a prince of the covenant will be destroyed. After coming to an agreement with him, he will act deceitfully. And with only a few people, he will rise to power.
Okay.
When the richest provinces feel secure, he will invade them and will achieve what neither his fathers nor his forefathers did.
This is a lot of he's and theys.
Pronoun abuse. I need a name.
Like, I really am having... You could not follow this unless you had notes.
No.
There's no fucking way.
The whole time we were reading this north and south, I was like, but I'll know when they get to Antiochus.
Yeah, sure.
That's the only thing.
I mean, only because you did research, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if I had just read this, without any context or anything, I'm not getting shit out of this chapter.
No.
This is crazy.
They were fighting a lot, and Israel was in the middle.
But I don't having no context for it. I would not even know why we're doing this. Like, what is going on?
I mean, okay, when they say in the north and in the south, Israel is literally in the middle of kingdoms north of them and kingdoms south of them that are fighting each other.
No, I get it.
And so Israel's like, fuck me.
Yeah.
So they never get to be in peace.
Right.
He will distribute plunder, loot, and wealth among his followers. He will plot the overthrow of fortresses, but only for a time. With a large army, he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south. The king of the south will wage war with a large and very powerful army, but he will not be able to stand because of the plots devised against him.
Okay.
Those who eat from the king's provisions will try to destroy him, meaning the people who are in his own court.
Right, I got it.
His army will be swept away, and many will fall in battle. The two kings, with their hearts bent on evil, will sit at the same table and lie to each other, but to no avail, because an end will still come at the appointed time.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, people die, and then when they die, we get to say, they died! I knew that was going to happen.
Right, yeah.
The king of the north will return to his own country with great wealth, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant. He will take action against it, and then return to his own country. At the appointed time, he will invade the south again, but this time the outcome will be different from what it was before.
Okay.
Ships of the western coastlands will oppose him, and he will lose heart. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the Holy Covenant. He will return and show favor to those who forsake the Holy Covenant.
I'm thinking there had to be somebody that wrote this and they had like books filled with history. And they're like, I really need to fit this into like a chapter.
Right.
So how are we going to do this?
North and south and north and south. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice.
Yeah.
Remember, like Antiochus did?
Yeah. Right.
Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. That's where Antiochus comes in and sets up a bunch of idols in the temples.
Right. Yeah. And they make them worship the idols in the temple of Jerusalem and all that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's what the abomination that causes desolation is.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like that's an actual term that we should remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to think that our podcast is the abomination that causes desolation.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's my new nickname. With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant, but the people who know their God will firmly resist him.
Okay.
Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned or captured or plundered. When they fall, they will receive a little help, and many who are not sincere will join them. This is so vague and stupid.
No, this is really dumb.
Some of the wise will stumble so that they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the end of time, for it will still come at the appointed time. Sure it will. Whatever it is.
Right, yeah.
The king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods.
Not unheard of things.
Yeah, I told you he's vile.
Yeah.
He's referred to as vile.
Sure.
Okay, and contemptible.
Right, yeah.
He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place.
Okay.
He will show no regard for
we're still talking about Antiochus, right? So he's going to be successful until the time of wrath takes place?
Through the time of wrath.
Right. So there again, this I'm only stopping here because the prophecies have been meant to build out further by a lot of people, right? Like they're supposed to go further on, but this is kind of indicating that time of wrath is right around the corner because Antiochus isn't going to fucking live forever. So they're writing this about their own time.
He's successful through the time of wrath because he will be successful until the time of wrath is completed.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, the time of wrath is occurring while he is in charge.
Okay. The time of wrath is his reign, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. I got it.
He will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the one desired by women. Nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all. I mean,
okay.
As you do.
Yeah, a lot of leaders do that.
Yeah.
So.
Instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god known to his ancestors. He will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god, and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He will make them rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price.
Okay.
So everything's for sale with this guy.
This is really tedious.
At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle, and the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and cavalry and a great fleet of ships. He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a fucking flood. He will also invade the capital beautiful land.
Yeah.
Many countries will fall, but Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon will be delivered from his hand.
Okay.
He will extend his power over many countries. Egypt will not escape. He will gain control of the treasures of gold and silver and all the riches of Egypt with the Libyans and Cushites in submission.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, we're naming some names.
Yeah.
But reports from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in a great rage to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch his royal tents, yeah, he will, between the seas at the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. The end.
Okay.
So
I've never been more happy to be done with a chapter because that was really bad.
Do you want me to read some of my notes here that summarize some of the history that we just did?
That would be great, I guess.
All right. So here we go. Chapter 10 was a prologue, right?
Right.
In the 3rd year of Cyrus, the Persian conqueror of Babylon, Cyrus.
Yep.
After fasting for 3 weeks, Daniel sees a vision of a supernatural being clothed in linen who says he is currently engaged in a battle with the Prince of Persia and being assisted by Michael. He must soon return to the combat, but first he will tell Daniel what's written in the Book of Truth.
Sure.
Okay? That was chapter 10.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to give a brief thing and then we're going to go into it, okay?
Okay. All right.
Chapter 11 is the report of the vision. So the angel continues, there's going to be 4 kings of Persia, and the last one will make war on Greece. After him will come a great king, but that king's empire will be broken up.
Okay.
There will be wars and marriages between the kings of the south and north. The king of the north will desecrate the temple and set up the abomination that causes desolation.
Which is Antiochus, right?
And which is the putting idols in the temple and making them do prayer to that or whatever.
Yeah.
At the end time, there will be a war between the king of the south and the king of the north. The king of the north will meet his end between the sea and the holy mountain. Okay. Now, this chapter gives a more particular explanation of the events that were predicted back in chapter 8, where Daniel had foretold the partition of Alexander's kingdom into 4 parts.
Right.
Remember that?
Yep.
2 of these, Egypt to the north of Judea and Syria to the south of it. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Egypt to the north and Syria to the south. Okay, that helps me a little bit.
Sure.
Take up Daniel's attention as his people were particularly concerned in their fate. So those are the 2 lands, the north and the south, the north and the south.
Yeah.
They're fighting and he's caught in the middle.
Sure.
Israel's caught in the middle, Judea. So that's why he's particularly paying attention to these 2.
Got it.
And these were the countries in which the greatest number of the Jews were dispersed.
Okay.
So that makes sense.
I knew there was a lot of Jewish people in Egypt for sure.
Right. So a lot of them went to Syria as well.
Got
apparently.
it. Okay.
So the dude speaks of the conquest of Macedonians.
Yeah.
And that was 168 BCE. And then he speaks of the Romans and of the church under that power.
Okay.
Daniel then speaks of an antichrist who would spring up there, and of those powers which at the latter days of the Roman monarchy were to push at it and overthrow many countries. Okay. Just hang with me, okay?
I'm hanging.
The king of the south in verse 40 of this chapter likely refers to the dominion of the Saracens or Arabs, an exceedingly great plague to the Roman Empire in the east.
Okay.
For 150 years. Then it says in 612 AD, when Muhammad and his followers began, through to 762 AD. Okay.
That's well beyond what we're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So just letting you know that's out there.
Right.
Okay. The king of the north in the same verse likely refers to the Ottoman Empire, by which, after about 150 years of almost uninterrupted hostilities, the Roman Empire in the east was completely overturned in 1453 AD. So they're trying to tell us like lots of future-y things, okay?
Right, yeah.
The chapter concludes with a prediction of the final overthrow of the northern power and of the manner in which this great event shall be accomplished. Okay? Whatever. I don't really understand that. That's a different summary that I'm like, okay, I'm just going to have it there for us to like make fun of.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
So anyway, the messenger, we're starting over now. The messenger went on to describe to Daniel the conflicts involving Persia and Greece as they would affect the Jews. This account runs on unbroken through chapters 11 and 12. Okay? So after the death of Cyrus, the Greek states steadily grew in power. Although there was no official Greek nation at that time, I'm using the name Greece to refer to that general region. It was like Macedonia, Greece, all that, okay?
Okay.
The most important of the Greek states was Macedonia in the north, which later became the center of the Greek Empire.
Got it.
Okay, and that's why you'll also often see those 2 somewhat in this section of the Bible used somewhat interchangeably or together.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Earlier Persian kings had some successes against these Greek states, but the Greeks eventually reestablished their independence and began to expand their power. Probably the most notable victory came in 333 BCE, when the armies of Alexander the Great took control of the eastern Mediterranean region. And yay, we know that name. We know that thing.
Yeah.
The Greek conquest then spread rapidly through Western Asia and Northern Africa. Then, with only a few years of establishing his power, Alexander unexpectedly died, and his vast empire was divided among 4 of his generals. Womp, womp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we remember that.
Right.
Okay. In the eastern areas of this divided empire, there were 2 main sectors, Egypt to the south and Syria to the north. Okay. When Syria became dominant under the leadership of a man who had previously served under the Egyptian leader, the struggle between the two increased.
Okay.
Israel, caught between the 2 powers, suffered much because of these conflicts.
Sure.
Okay. Later, an alliance was established between the south and the north when the Egyptian king gave his daughter in marriage to the Syrian king. But the marriage broke up, and eventually the Syrian king was murdered. Okay.
Okay.
So we saw some of that, but now we have countries to attach to them.
Right. Okay?
Yeah. The woman's brother then invaded and plundered Syria, and that was about 246 BCE.
Okay.
During the next 50 years, Syria and Egypt invaded each other on several occasions, which that was that whole north and south that we went through, which they could have just summarized into this sentence. Both sides tasting victory and defeat.
Sure.
Right?
It was a constant give and take.
Like 20 verses summarized in one sentence.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. A decisive battle as far as the people of Israel were concerned was fought in 198 BCE. So we are quickly approaching the 0 year.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Some of the Jews joined with the Syrians against Egypt, thinking they were fulfilling a prophetic vision that would bring benefits to themselves. In the end, they only brought themselves greater trouble because Syria not only conquered Egypt, but also took firm control of Palestine.
Okay.
Right? Like, oh my God. The Syrian king tried to gain full control of the Egyptian throne by giving his daughter in marriage to the king of Egypt, but the scheme did not bring him the success he hoped for. Womp womp. He then attacked Greece, but was defeated and forced to flee back to Syria, where he died.
Okay.
The new king, in order to obtain money to pay the victorious enemy, was attempting to plunder the Jewish temple treasures when he was suddenly murdered. As happens.
Right.
All right. Then we get into Antiochus Epiphanes, a vile person.
Got it.
Like literally that is how he's described.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Antiochus Epiphanes then became king over the region controlled by Syria. Okay, so he is king of Syria.
Okay.
He was not the legal heir, but by bribery and flattery, he managed to gain the throne. He was considered a contemptible person, treacherous, cruel, greedy, and ambitious for power. He devised the most evil scheme to deceive his allies, crush his enemies, and plunder the defenseless. Within a short time, Antiochus had conquered Egypt, helped by certain traitors in the Egyptian administration who betrayed their king.
Okay.
He tried to form a partnership with the new king that he had appointed in Egypt. He's like, hey, I just made you king. Let's make a partnership.
Right.
But this king was as deceitful as Antiochus was, and the partnership soon failed.
I see.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Antiochus returned to Syria, planning to carry out the chief aim of his program, which was the destruction of the Jews and their religion.
Okay.
Yeah, he was like, fuck all y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. Before he had a chance to launch his anti-Jewish campaign, Antiochus heard there was unrest in Egypt. So he returned south to put down the rebellion real quick. But Egypt called in the help of a foreign navy, and Antiochus was forced to flee back to Palestine.
Okay.
On his arrival in Jerusalem, he found that fighting had broken out between rival Jewish groups. What?
Yeah.
One of these groups consisted of people who were loyal to their ancient religion. the other of people who were prepared to change their beliefs and practices to gain political benefits from their foreign overlords.
Huh. Okay.
I wonder what that was about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd like to learn more about that, actually.
Already angry because, well, I wonder if that's when we have the Christians coming out and fighting.
No, this would have been before the Christians.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well, it would have been before the Christians, but it could have been like an early group of people not wanting to like stick with the old traditions, which allowed Christianity to come into play.
Sure. I mean, I think there throughout the Bible we've run across different ideas as to how people worship Yahweh and everything. So True. I'm assuming it's just a different group.
Got it.
Well, and they said that they were embracing their foreign ideas. So like it was,
right, that's true.
They were probably trying to either worship another god or incorporate their god into some sort of a foreign new type of worship that allows for this other god.
Right.
As to appease somebody to help them win power or whatever the case may be. So.
All right. Well, already angry because of his defeat in Egypt, Antiochus eagerly took the opportunity to attack the Jews. As you do, I guess.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
The enraged Antiochus slaughtered Jews in thousands, made others slaves, and prohibited all from keeping their religious laws. Worse than this, he set up a Greek idol and a Greek altar in the Jewish temple, then sacrificed animals that the Jews considered unclean. To loyal Jews, this was an abomination, an awful horror. Though some Jews joined Antiochus in order to save their lives, others stood firm no matter what it cost them.
Got it.
And this was the abomination that caused desolation.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Jewish resistance to Antiochus was led by a courageous priest and his 5 sons, known as
the Maccabees.
The Maccabees.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm excited to read about those guys.
I am kind of as well. So
it's an interesting time period. So, yeah. They persuaded many to join them in their fight for religious freedom. Amid all the persecution, some Jews failed, but others stood firm and were martyred for their faith. The effect of the persecution among the people at large was one of a spiritual cleansing. Purified faith enabled the faithful to stand firm, with the result being that in 165 BCE, after more than 3 years of fighting, they regained their religious independence and rededicated their temple.
Okay.
Scholars think that this specific revolt directly led to the writing of the book of Daniel.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we get to the Antichrist and the end times Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay.
Okay.
In addition to blaspheming the God of the Jews, Antiochus dishonored the Syrian and Greek gods. So he was just like pissing on everybody's gods. Considering himself to be above every god, he replaced the existing gods with others brought from elsewhere.
Huh.
He's like, I'm just going to put this one here and that one there. Nanny, nanny, boo-boo to you both.
Right.
He rewarded those who flattered him by giving them gifts of land and promoting them to positions of power. He would also, he was such a weird dude. He would walk through the streets and sometimes just give a large amount of money to somebody for no reason. Or he would surprise them with gifts. He was just a really weird dude.
Got it.
Okay. Towards the end of his reign, Antiochus was attacked by Egypt. He began his successful counterattack by overrunning Palestine and once again slaughtering the unfortunate Jews, though he did not invade neighboring states that were hostile to the Jews. He then moved down to take over Egypt, along with those African states that were under Egypt's control.
Okay.
When he was later attacked from the northeast by the Parthians, Antiochus lost his temporary headquarters on the plains of Palestine and went out with his usual fury and confidence to meet the attack. But when returning from the battle, he suddenly and unexpectedly died. And that was the end of one section, and I was like, oh, hell no, what? And so I had to go look up how the fuck did Antiochus die?
Sure.
Right? All right, so various religious explanations exist for Antiochus's death.
Okay.
Apparently, he attacked a temple of the Mesopotamian deity Naniah in Persia shortly before his demise, and his death was possibly attributed to impiety and punishment by Nanaya or her followers, is my guess.
Okay.
Jewish
but
sources,
he was able to battle the
other gods,
the Yahweh's people, and he didn't kill him.
Yep.
So okay, all right.
Yep. So Nanaya is stronger than Yahweh.
Throwing that out there.
Never even heard of Nanaya, but apparently she's stronger than Yahweh.
Right. Yeah.
Jewish sources gave credit for Antiochus's death to his earlier impiety at the Temple of Jerusalem.
Oh, of course.
Retroactive, you know?
Right. According
to 2nd Maccabees, he died from divinely inflicted disease. So we're not there yet, but I find that laughable and cool.
Yeah.
According to a later rabbinical work called the Scroll of Antiochus, when Antiochus heard that his army had been defeated in Judea, he boarded a ship and fled to the coastal cities. Wherever he came, the people rebelled and called him the fugitive. So he drowned himself in the sea.
Oh.
This story is from the 2nd century, however, and is generally considered secondary and unlikely to be accurate.
Got it.
And then I just have one more note about Antiochus because he's just so interesting to me.
Right.
His often eccentric behavior and capricious actions during his interactions with common people, such as appearing in the public bathhouses and applying for municipal offices. And like I said, just he would just do the weirdest shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Led some of his contemporaries to call him Epimenies instead of Epiphanes, which means the mad. So Antiochus the mad instead of
right. Yeah.
Antiochus the bright.
Right.
So that was chapter 11.
Okay.
And then that was a summary of chapter 11. Because what the fuck was chapter 11? I
really have to believe that it was just somebody that was trying to take all of the 400 years of history that they had to cover to make this thing work.
Yeah.
And shoved it into one chapter.
Yeah. It was a bunch of countries fighting each other. The end.
Right. Yeah. I mean, really everything we just covered, it sounds so bad because it should have taken a textbook to cover all of that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of history that we tried to just shove into one chapter.
Exactly.
And it doesn't work, obviously, especially when you they, them, and he have the whole way through.
Right?
It's just you can't pronoun your way through history. That's not how it works.
What I find really interesting is that half the chapter was 400 years of history. The other half was Antiochus.
Yeah.
What?
Right. Well, it's because that's the time that they're writing them in.
Yeah.
That's the most relevant to them.
Obviously.
They shoved the rest of the history in between, and then they're like, and now Antiochus. Mm-hmm. And they tried to make it sound like a vision because that's what they're writing it with the idea that this is a vision that Daniel is having, post Babylonia and whatever. Mm-hmm. So they're writing it from the perspective of someone 400 years prior, but they're writing it in the time that they're dealing with Antiochus.
Yeah.
So
they made it so fucking obvious.
They really did.
This is what we're dealing with right now because we devoted half a chapter to it.
Well, I think all the way through Daniel, I've been saying this is just all of this is absurd.
Yeah.
I can't believe how unbelievable this is.
Right.
And to have so much of this book attributed to the meaningfulness of the New Testament makes that basis absurd.
Right.
Just the whole thing is wrong. And it's just glaringly obvious to me.
The more that we read, the funnier and stupider it gets. And it makes me that much less inclined to feel the slightest bit spiritual or led by God or what the fuck ever.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. There's nothing here that lends to a God. There's nothing here that lends to anything other than propaganda written hundreds of years after the fact. And that's all it is. That's all it is.
It just happens to be the papers that survived.
Right.
That somebody stapled together.
Yeah. We attribute way too much meaning to this shit.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you and I were just reading this because it's interesting history, that would be cool.
No, and again, I think we've said this before, but if we were able to look at the Bible without the current context of what it means to our society, and look at it strictly as a book from history, it could be interesting, right? it could be interesting because it does mention things that happened back then and how people felt about it. But when we're trying to attribute meaning to these things, that's where this whole thing breaks down and fails.
Exactly.
And I'm struggling with, why this is even thought of as a book that is really important, because it just doesn't, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
It just doesn't.
All right. Well, I think that's all we got.
That is all we got.
So that was Daniel chapter 11.
Sure as fuck was.
Which means that we'll be back tomorrow with
Daniel chapter 12, and that will wrap up Daniel.
Right. And then we'll be doing some extracurricular Daniel on top after we get done with the Q&A. So that'll be fun too.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys then.
Bye.